Right. Let's get this over with. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where, with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me is someone making his 40th Harpin Pod appearance, also a resident stats guru. Welcome back to Mr. Keno Miller.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
No problem. And also here is someone earning cap number 6 himself. Hello to Mr. Hugo Gordon.
Thanks for having me back, Jeff.
No problem. And Keno, I hear in the grapevine that you plan to be moonlighting another pod for the Women's Six Nations.
Yeah, myself and Irish Women's Rugby Supporters Club are starting up a women's rugby podcast. I'm going to be producing and co-hosting, so it's a bit of a change for me. But I got asked and I couldn't say no. In fairness, it's a part of the pod sphere which is very underserviced at the moment. So I kind of felt like I needed to do my bit.
Absolutely. We spoke to herself there a couple of weeks ago on the pod and to introduce it. It's called Mother Ruckers, the Irish women's rugby podcast, and that should be appearing very soon. The Women's Six Nations starts at the end of March, so keep an eye out for that, okay? All right, listen, there's no putting this off any longer. Let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Ireland v France in round 4 of the 2025 Guinness Men's Six Nations. It was played at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday, March the 8th. There was a touch of rain around D4, but the conditions were pretty much okay for rugby, although Irish fans were getting bad news before kickoff as they learned James Lowe had to be withdrawn due to back spasms, meaning Jamie Osborne had to switch wings with Calvin Nash going straight into start. Not an ideal build-up for Ireland, but anyway, after all the pre-match pomp, including the honouring both Caelan Doris and Finlay Bealham earning their 50th caps, plus the three legends, Messrs. Healy, Murray and O'Mahony, playing their final home match for Ireland. Eventually, it was Roman Intimac getting things underway, kicking towards the South Stand, Keno.
Yeah, I'm just going to rewind it just a tiny bit first because
Yep.
there might have been only been light showers, but I think metaphorically, the storm clouds were gathering with that late withdrawal of Lowe. You kind of feel like there was a definite game plan planned around Lowe on one wing and
Yep.
Osborne on the other.
Yep.
And to go from 66 caps between Lowe and Hansen down to 17 with Nash and Osborne, it's a hell of a drop.
And the switching wings can't have helped
Yeah.
either. Yeah.
No, you kind of feel, and to be honest, I think it plays out in the rest of it that I don't think we kicked contestables as much as we probably would have done had things gone to the original pad. So it's just another straw for the camel's back there. Anyway, Entimac kicked off. There was an aerial contest immediately and impressively won by Calvin Nash, which sparked an early Irish attack. Things started brightly enough, actually. It was a good kick in behind from Prendergast, which almost finds the line, but the French were really well organised and managed to clear it. Another promising looking probe soon after, lost to a handling error by Osborne off a Nash pass. But the interplay was good. The running lines were good. The handling was decent. It was just kind of that last pass thing, which has kind of dogged us a bit this over the last year and a half, really. And it was during that actually that Bundy took a boot to the face in a tackle, which I think kind of kept him relatively quiet the rest of the time, his time on the pitch. And Mofana offload forwards on that, thankfully, gave us a first scrum rather than a first real attacking opportunity for France. It was a reset and then a free in the first scrum against France going early. Actually, Ireland did pretty well in the set pieces across the 80. It was 4 out of 4 in the scrum and only lost one line out to a French steal out of 19, which is far better than we've been doing so far. And honestly, I thought if we nailed those two, we'd be going a long way towards winning, but it shows what I know.
Mm.
Anyway, yeah, we earned several penalties through sustained pressure with ball in hand. Seemed fairly happy to take it through multiple phases. I remember seeing the pace count going up to about as far as 19 at one point. So definitely got taking it through, but really not getting very much forward over time. France repeatedly penalised though for infringements at the ruck and offside, defending, especially in their own 22. I was kind of frustrated that France gave away as many penalties as they did across the 80 without seeing any consequence for it, bar the penalties. The only yellow they copped was actually directly for a cynical infringement. So you kind of hope with they double the infringements we did. You kind of would have thought that they might have seen something for it.
There wasn't even a warning, I don't think, at any stage, was
No, I
there?
don't think
No,
there was a verbal warning.
no.
So that's a bit disappointing. But you take what you get with Southern Hemisphere referees. It really does change the dynamic of the game. Um, Kellen Doris nearly scored. Powerful drive to the line, but was really superbly held up over the line by Aldrich and Budahunt. It was only 6 minutes in. The game was going at absolute clappers at this point. Um, Doris earns a poached turnover after that, and Ireland go for the posts. It was the right time to go for the posts. Unfortunately, Prendergast, I think, bit spooked on his first kick. France quite cleverly put some of the big lads as close to him as they possibly could just to put the shits up him. And I think it worked this time. It was relatively straightforward, but he hit the left post. It was his only miss in the game. He got it on target every time, including some absolute screamers. The one from halfway was incredible. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself all over the shop. Um, so yeah, it was kind of the miss. It kind of felt like it compounded the frustrations that were being felt in and around that point in time. Um, despite the infringements, actually, I have to say, the French defense was superb in this game. Super. I actually think it was their defense that was the winning and losing of this game, or well, the winning for them and the losing for us. Um, I think knowing that they had the 7-1 bench, that they actually utilized that quite well in the period before the bench comes on, where their forwards were absolutely emptying themselves. They were doubling up on most tackles. They were numbering up in the rucks to slow down Ireland's ball, and they were absolutely sucking the energy out of our phase play. So yeah, up to about 14 minutes here, or close enough to it, we were maintaining fairly extended period of pressure all this time, and a lot of it in the French 22, but just unable to find that last gap or create something, some change to turn that possession into points. And there was more exceptional French defense at that point. Crow and Aldrich, very specifically in that period of time, they were both excellent for the breakdown. Launched a lethal French counter-attack from a loose ball in their 22, which sent Dupont screaming down the pitch for what looked, to all intents and purposes, like an absolute worldie of a try. But on review, it said one knock on. I think there were two knock-ons in that. And
Yep.
frankly, I think that could have been a penalty on another day. That wrap was very wide, but we've had the rub of the green as well on those calls during the recent times, so I don't think I can nitpick too much over that one. Another lost ball in their 22 with a French jackal on the return run by Nash gets them out of their half. The siege is lifted, and we have literally nothing to show for it. It was very disheartening at that point. And if we thought it was disheartening then, just wait another couple of minutes. A nice few moments in the first real Irish defensive set. Irish defense was actually pretty good for most of the game. Not perfect, pretty good. Osborne gets a rip, but France regather it, which is unfortunate. We weren't able to dive on that one. Doris gets a beautifully timed jackal and turns it over, kick it down the line. France run it back off a line-out maul, and Doris does exactly the same thing again. He was one of the few players for me who came out with pluses still in his performance column. He was excellent throughout and played like a man possessed. Now this is the bit where this is where the next bit starts going wrong for us. Then an Osborne clearance doesn't quite find touch. It was supposed to find touch because you either need to find grass or find touch with those range finders. And with that French back three, French counter attack goes from there, and screaming down the left wing, Joe McCarthy decides the best way to stop this from happening is to grab Ramos and yoink him back, which somehow was picked up by the referee. It was so subtle. I'm not sure how they spotted that one. Eagle-eyed TMO. So yeah, to be honest, yeah, it's a straight yellow. It's really obvious. It was really soft yellow card to give away, and this was the first significant momentum swing in France's direction. France waste no time. This is about 21 minutes in. France waste no time exploiting that numerical advantage. really powerful line out maul. They really went for the mauls, like despite the kind of the maul being depowered recently by the one stop law change. A powerful maul is still a weapon, and the French maul is, use my French, fucking powerful. They brought it infield as well, which meant they created a really nice large gap on that blind side. And Dupont, I think he passed Mac out to Bielbury on the far side, and it was a 2v1. Sama's covered Mac because he had to choose one. I wouldn't blame him for that at all. I think any player would do the same in that position. And Bielbury just finishes clinically cleanly in the corner. Yeah, point on him actually. He's in truly superb form. Like he is an astonishingly good winger, and it's a game where we do see great wingers in the world. Like a lot of them from New Zealand, some from South Africa too. But in terms of his all-round game, plus pace, plus agility, his footballing, we didn't beat him many times in the air as I'd hoped. He really had an excellent game, and it's really a continuation of form. This is not out of the blue. You kind of maybe it might be Bordeaux's year to do something to go that extra step in the top 14, but however. Ramos misses the conversion because it is quite far out. It's a difficult angle, and Ramos is he was here and he was between two posts, except when he wasn't with his kicking in this game. From there, it was a bit of back and forth. Ireland not getting the better in the contestables that we were putting up, and France kind of happy just to kick it back over the halfway line and defend, just waiting for that counter opportunity to come up. And then the next thing you know, it's Ruckgate. France are, I think, just outside of our 22. Sheehan has just run out of our 22, getting some distance from our try line on a reclaimed ball. And Dupont tackles him really effectively, disengages to go for the poach. Now, at that point, Byrne comes in for the clear out, and it's shoulder to shoulder, and it's enough of a wrap to call it legal. His arm does come in after, but it did start out. So I think there's enough of that. The Porter was coming in behind him. Unfortunately, Dupont's foot is trapped in that ruck, and he goes over awkwardly from this kind of diagonal pressure. Porter coming in behind Byrne, and it looked to all the world like ACL or MCL or both. I don't think we've got to have that confirmed yet. But if it's one or the other, it's 6 months he's looking at, and if it's both, it could be up to a year. It's really, really fortunate injury, which honestly no one would wish that on anyone. I mean, there may have been some Irish people wishing Dupont a mild case of stomach flu or something before the game, but I don't think anyone would have wished an injury like that on anybody. And if they are, they should find something else to watch. So Luku comes on for Dupont. I mean, it's terrible to lose Dupont, but they literally had one back position covered on the bench, and it happened to be for Dupont because they were planning to use him elsewhere. And France have no back subs, further back subs available at this point. It was on. Ireland survive out the remainder of the McCarthy yellow, and there's a kind of a hint of a feeling of hope for Ireland at this point, despite the fact that we're half an hour in and still scoreless. But we have managed to keep France to just the one. Soon after, actually, Ireland do manage to get on the scoreboard. France with another infringement, taking a man off the ball just outside their 22, and Prendergast absolutely slots this one. There's no distracting from this one. Doesn't matter how many big lads you put in front of him now. He's learned from that one, and he's thankfully got the mental fortitude to go back and do it the second time. So France lead just 2 points at that stage. But from the recent. There's an immediate penalty awarded to France. Porter penalised for obstruction on Damien Penaud. Now, this one was a little bit soft for me. He doesn't even so much as move back as Porter doesn't move backwards to block Penaud's line, but he does crab sideways back towards his own line a little bit.
And I thought he turned his head to the left, which kind of made it look like he was looking to see where the guy is so he could see where he was positioned, but there wasn't a lot in it.
No, I mean, there was no definitive kind of stepping into a line.
They are clamping down on that, but I still think this was harsh.
As I was going to
Yeah,
say, yeah,
yeah.
they're going very hard. I mean, as they usually do with new laws, new regulations, new changes, they go very hard on them at the beginning. But when was the last time you saw a seatbelt tackle called?
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll
Yeah,
see what
it's
happens in a year.
it's the offense du jour, I suppose. Like,
Yeah,
it's
this is the one they want to be seen to be acting on. So that is what it is. So Ramos converts that one. And France are back ahead 8-3. Then yeah, up to the end of the half. There was a lovely gather from Osborne of a fairly loose French kick, uh, and he hoofs it down. It sits up beautifully just before the French try line, and not only that, but he absolutely hairs it up the pitch after his own kick and managed to scrag Penno. Nearly sets up a wonderful opportunity, but there's a tiny little Irish knock on at the breakdown. And as you know, there's no difference between a tiny little knock on and a massive, huge whopper knock on if they're seen. Oh, that's it. It's a knock on. Um, so another French offside then soon after that at the halfway line gives us a sliver of hope. We get the last play of the half, and Prendergast drains a 50-meter penalty and nearly clears the dead ball line too. And France have just a 2-point lead, 8-6 going into the half.
yeah, and that was the good half.
No, it didn't feel like it.
No, I mean, listen, I think it's all about that first 20 minutes, isn't it? I mean, I think there was a stat there. After 20 minutes, we had 70% possession, and it was still nil all. That's just not. I mean, big game like this,
Yeah,
you've got to be converting your chances. We were being held up over the line. There was a missed kick. There was just any kind of points kind of got on the board there at that stage. And like you say, the French were emptying themselves. They were using their 7-1 bench, tackling like demons throughout. So they were exhausting themselves, but they knew they could, I suppose, as well. So any plans to wear them out, that's fine, but you do have to finish them off at the end of it, and it wasn't happening. In the controversy over Dupont sort of started on the pitch. You had Aldrit, who was taken over as captain. He was going up to the referee. I think Angus Gardner handled that particular thing really
yeah,
well. He said, "Listen, I'm sorry, it's a rugby incident. If they'd seen something, they would have done something." And I believe that as well. I'm sure they did look at it closely, but it's unfortunate. It was unfortunate for Dupont. I think whether maybe Gaultier got his emotions to fire up the dressing room, natural emotion, or he just used that to get them fired up at the break as well, to sort of get them saying like, listen, look what they've done to us. Let's get out there. I don't know, but it was while it was, we would have wanted to play them without Dupont. I think the way it happened might have helped spur them on for that second half. But listen, it was, and then the Irish defense, it was good, but the French defense was better. I think because they had more opportunities to use it, I suppose, but they were covering, they were shutting us down. Our game just couldn't get going. Unless we were kicking into the corner. Sam put a few good touch kicks through, and we'll see more of that. We see more of that in the second half. But as regards generating any kind of distance, advancing the ball up the field, it just wasn't happening from the midfield. From around halfway. Anyway, what did you make of it, Hugo?
Yeah, so I mean, the opening 10 minutes, I was actually pretty pleased by. We came out, really came out firing, really kind of a lot of intensity in those opening few minutes. I think we did go out to make an impact and maybe try and get ahead of that 7-1 bench when it did unroll, kind of get some points on the board early on. I think around the 10-minute mark on Blue Sky, I said something like I was really thrilled by how we had started the game. Basically, the moment I pressed post on that, Sam missed his kick, and it felt like things started to kind of deteriorate a little bit by then. By minute 20, as Keane, you were saying, it was we still didn't have any points on the board, and it was starting to feel a little bit ominous, and France was starting to grow back into it. And then the yellow card, and it was Joe McCarthy's a great player, but he can be a penalty machine, and this, even by his standards, was just incredibly stupid. And we were actually a little bit lucky that we came out of that sin bin period only 5-0 down. France put a lot of pressure on us during that, and actually we held up to it pretty well. And then kind of the Dupont injury, as you say, not one you want to see. I would have liked to have seen Antoine Dupont decided he was going to retire just before the game for the week at least, and go on a nice trip somewhere else. But
or play cricket or something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's decided he doesn't want to be in Dublin that week. But to watch a player like him go off with that injury is tough to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Keno?
Yeah, I was just going to say Antoine Dupont. He's never won an All Ireland medal. That's what I was kind of hoping might have been the hook. It's like, and there's a double to be had there as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're perfectly willing to help him out with that. No, listen, it was it was a frustrating half in terms of the scoreboard, but the way it went to finish 8-6, especially with that kick right at the end, it put us in a better frame of mind going into halftime anyway at that stage. And like you say, and we were keeping the score down. We thought that it would stay low over the 80 minutes, and it seemed to be tracking that the score was, both teams were still in single digits at halftime. When we say, like I said, the score was Ireland 6, France 8. Before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere, like our YouTube channel, where you'll find a bonus chat with Kigo during the week, all about ticket prices at Irish Test matches. To get access to our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky, so do follow us there if you can, and please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. Well, back at the Aviva Stadium, Sam kicked off the second half, and well, Hugo, this is the part you've been dreading, so take it away, man. Godspeed.
Yeah, the rewatch of this half was pretty tough. It started okay. We put them under a lot of pressure from the kickoff. A short passage play, which ended with Ramos having to skew a kick off the outside of his boot into touch. And from there, we put them under a lot of pressure in their 22. They ended up conceding a penalty that we put into the corner. And then off the line out, Sheehan finds himself with only Luku but blocking the right wing, and he's able to steam in and go over for the try, which we then are able to convert. And I have to say, at this point, I was feeling pretty good about this. It felt like the momentum had swung back our way a little bit with the Dupont injury, with the fact that we kept ourselves back in that during that tough bit, and we're starting to get some points on the board. And at this point, actually, I thought, you know what, I actually think we're going to do this. It's going to be tight, it's going to be nervy, but I think we're going to see it out from here. And that optimism lasted all of about 2 minutes. When Budahan crashed over at the other end after some lovely, very slick attacking play from France, including a really, really impressive off the floor offload from Lusu, who had a brilliant game. He's some player to be able to bring off the bench. France hasn't always been a happy hunting ground for him, but this is his best performance in a blue shirt by quite some way. Kind of a couple of kind of frustrating issues in the build up to this try. One was Flamon taking Omani out off the ball and on a ruck in the build up. Flamon is saved. The referee decides there's not anything in it, because I think he doesn't kind of go for the full wrap, and in the ref's view, Omani's already retreating away. I can see the argument, and I know refs don't want to rule off tries for, they don't want to be kind of on the kind of the giving the benefit of the doubt to the attacking side. But just because a player's retreating off the ruck doesn't mean you can take them out. And while I don't think Budahan does really, he doesn't go in fully, he doesn't hold him on the ground or anything like that. He has still taken out a player off of our pillar defense, who France then goes straight through that gap. It was pretty frustrating one. I don't think, given the way the game subsequently went, that was necessarily the losing of the game, but it certainly felt like a decision that really went against us. Even worse was Calvin Nash being yellow carded in the build up to this for a high tackle. It did remain as a yellow. Rightly, I thought it was passive, but again, we're back down to 14 men. Does mean that Barassi had to go off for France, and having used all their back replacements, Jegu had to go in at centre for them. And again, you're feeling, they've now got the 7-1 seems to be falling apart. It kind of a couple of key injuries in the back line. They're having to play a forward in the midfield. And again, it just felt like kind of, it felt like there was still, we could have done something from there. But actually, this ended up being the beginning of 15 minutes that not just probably cost us the championship, but actually might well have cost us second place and quite a few million euro at the end of this tournament. France start to throw on their forwards off the bench. We do bring on Jack Conan and Ryan Baird, but with a man down, we just are not coping with the new firepower that France is suddenly able to bring on, and they are destroying us at the breakdown. They are making meters with ease with every tackle. We just really, from this point on, we just start to be blown off the park in the kind of the next 10 or so minutes. And kind of case in point being a massive counter ruck in midfield where we get driven off the ball. France all of a sudden find themselves with huge numbers out left. I wasn't able to count the overlap, but it was something like 5 or 6 French attackers to maybe 3 Irish defenders. Ends up with BRA on the wing, who sends a very, very clever grubber kick through that he somehow then manages to chase down. He is miles away from it and manages to put on the afterburners to get round to it. Actually, the player who comes closest to disrupting the try is actually Maxime Musa, who nearly gets in the way. But BRA is able to touch down. It's a great try, but it's just a gut punch. In the space of 5 minutes, the entire game suddenly turned. France are 22-13 up. And it only gets worse a few minutes later. They're back in our 22. We are under intense pressure again, still down to 14 men, really starting to look tired. And we can see the penalty, which Ramos chips over easily to make it 25-13. Calvin Nash does come back on after this. We also bring on Jack Crowley on for Aki. Crowley actually had a pretty good game at inside centre, but it's just not where I think we necessarily want him playing. And it just, again, felt like just some of the rhythm was going out of our game. And France at this stage just seem unstoppable. They're back in our 22 before long. We've got no answer to it. We look exhausted. And Jegu, to kind of add insult to injury, is the one who crashes over to make it 32-13. It's game over before the hour mark, which was pretty tough. It has to be said. James Ryan and Thomas Clarkson now come on, but really too late for them to have much impact. And I think just everyone, players and fans alike, just I think a bit shell-shocked at this stage. Couple of positive moments in the aftermath. Crowley did very impressively to win us a maul. And shortly afterwards, Prendergast took the ball on the loop, kind of coming out of our half, and actually looked like he was moving into space. But I think he got kind of caught in two minds about what to actually do, and he decided to take it up the middle a little bit hesitantly rather than trying to find the overlap out to the right, which proved to be the wrong option. He got scragged, and it wasn't long before France are back in our 22 with the ball, and we can see another penalty under pressure, and it's 35-13. We do bring on the last of our subs shortly afterward. We bring on Herring, we bring on Cian Healy and Conor Murray. Really, really not the scenario in which I think we'd hope to be bringing on the likes of Healy and Murray for their last Dublin appearance. Felt like kind of a bit of a rough ending to that story for them. With a game already lost and kind of the mood around the Aviva pretty low. Similarly with O'Mahony, tough for that to be, for players who've given so much to Irish rugby, for this to be their last experience playing in green in Dublin. We do get a little bit of extended pressure, at least from this point on in the last 10 minutes. France, start to give away more penalties, which again, not necessarily maybe punished by the referees as much as we would have liked, but we're just not able to make it count. A few kind of fairly speculative kicks from Sam that just don't really go where we need them to go. At one point, he sends a chip over the top, and it's Herring of all people who has to chase onto it. He gives a very game attempt, but it's not necessarily who we'd wanted those kicks to be going through for. Budhan is eventually yellow carded for as you say, cynical play rather than kind of repeat offending. But just when it looks like we might actually be starting to put some points on the board, albeit far too little, far too late. And when it looks like Henshaw is going to have an easy run under the post from Sam Prendergast's pass, actually it's Ramos who steps forward, runs about 50 meters, puts it back into Damien Penaud, who'd otherwise had a fairly quiet game, but you give Penaud an inch and he's going to take it, and he darts over, and it felt like it summed up our day. Just a real kind of horrible punctuation mark on what had been a pretty horrible day for Irish rugby. We did get 2 late scores, with France clearly basically already mentally off the pitch and celebrating. Conan scored one, and Healy did get to score one. Again, it felt as while it was very, in another scenario, what a great moment that would have been to watch Cian Healy go over for a try on his last Dublin appearance. It just felt kind of, I don't know, there was a bit of an element of tragedy to it in a way. Just a kind of the worst possible scenario for a score like that to come with us having really been blown away in that second half. And yeah, just a really, it did not get easier on rewatch. This one, a really rough second half. Or really, it's not, and we'll talk about this maybe a bit more in final comments, but it's not just losing. This France team is very good, but we weren't even close. We were blown off the park, and that is for a team that, with 43 minutes gone, I thought we were on course to win the championship. It was a real rough being brought down to earth.
Yeah, fair play to you, man. That's as good a summary as we could possibly do. I mean, I think it's important to state, and we've all been approaching this like this. It's important to state that two things can be true. We can disagree with some of the officials' decisions, but at the same time, that's not necessarily the reason we lost. We spoke about what happened in the first half. The Peter O'Mahony thing. There's two aspects to that. There's the incident itself, the official. Now, one thing that Gardner did was explain in plain English what his view was. So he's given you something to disagree with. And I think that's the way it should be. I've always wanted that from refs. You don't have to agree. It's his call. He's paid to make the call in the day. It was interesting the way he phrased it. His phrasing was number 6 is retreating backwards as a matador and gets bumped. So, okay. I get the reference there, and it does actually make sense. I'd never heard it before. It might be a thing, but that's what happened there. There was other incidents as well. There was a scrum there right at the halfway where he told them to use it. He told France to use it. It was at the base of the scrum. They were trying to milk a penalty. He said use it a second time. He said use it a third time, and it lasted 6 seconds, and they just played on. That was frustrating. Now, of course, we had our own frustrations. Just when it was 13-22, they just gone 2 scores up, and when we overthrow that one line out. The one line out we missed the whole day. That's when that happened, and the timing of those things just wasn't great at all. But of course, you had French performances. Bill Barry was player of the match. Boudon, Shegu, Luku all played really well the second half, but it was the team effort. It was the way they were fired up as a unit, whether it was in the first half with their starters or when you started seeing the big numbers on their backs in the second half. It was just a team effort right there from 1 to 23. They were determined. They felt they owed us one, I think. I just thought it was interesting when at 60 minutes, Ryle Nugent says the score was 13-32, and Roger Nugent says this could get ugly for Ireland. And I was just like, what do they think? What do they think is going to happen next? Like, we did get a couple of tries towards the end, but it just felt hollow. Got us to within 15 points. I don't think we really deserved to be any closer. What did you make of it, Keno?
You're going to make me talk about the half.
Yep.
Gosh, Jesus.
If we got it, you got it.
Do I know? I mean, I could start talking about how this is all actually Warren Gatlin's fault.
There you go.
He led Alliance. It was terrible. Mike Furlong's never been right since. Because he was so bad, they had to bring in Farrell, which means he's not here to lead the troops on probably the very end of a development cycle. And yes, so it's Warren Gatlin's fault.
That all tracks. We can go with that. Yeah, no problem. I know. Listen, it was frustrating day all around. We didn't really want to talk, especially about that second half. There's a lot went on and a lot to harp on. But listen, we'll probably best leave that little portion of our humble little pod there. And I'll have to say it one more time though, because this is how we do these pods. I have to read out the final scoreline, which was close your ears now. Ireland 27, France 42. Elsewhere in the Six Nations, a couple of late tries were enough to salvage Wales 2 bonus points in defeat to the Scots at Murrayfield, which actually gives them a fighting chance of avoiding the dubious honour of being the first non-Italian team in the Six Nations era to collect 2 consecutive wooden spoons. Then on Sunday, those very same Italians went to Twickenham, where they had the English level at 14-all after half an hour, only to succumb 47-24, which puts Steve Borthwick's side in the championship mix for next weekend, although the title is, of course, very much France's to lose at this stage. Meanwhile, in the under-20s, Neil Doak's Wolf Puppies defended bravely against France, but still fell 12-22, dropping to fifth on the table, although a top three finish is still an attainable goal, with England and France battling out for the title next weekend. Then in the Women's Celtic Challenge, many congrats to the Leinster-Ulster hybrid side, the Wolfhounds, who clinched their second consecutive title with a resounding 102-0 victory at Energy Park over Edinburgh, as the other Irish outfit, the Clovers, earned second spot, winning 55-33 at Gwalia Lightning. Now women's rugby turns its attention to their own Six Nations, which kicks off on March 22nd. And as we said earlier in the pod, do check out Ailva and Kino's pod covering the tournament, Mother Ruckers, the Irish Women's Rugby Podcast. Going back to our feature match from Saturday, afterwards, Simon Easterby had this to say, quote, "We felt we didn't take enough of our opportunities and we didn't put them under enough pressure. It wasn't until the game was gone that we showed we could score some points," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Warren Doyle said this on our Facebook page, quote, "Game was lost in the first 20 minutes. We didn't achieve the points to counter the French flair. What came after was very predictable," end quote. Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so now this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Kino.
That was pretty much my thought. Yep. At the final whistle. But at this point, I kind of thought the easier way. I didn't have time to look back at the second half, so I thought, why don't I just look at some stats instead? That's much easier. So I did that. And honestly, looking at the attack stats, there's very little between the two sides. Now, looking at the defensive stats, there's a fair difference between the two sides. France put in an incredible defensive shift. It's the best I've seen them perform in defense in probably since the World Cup. It was absolutely back to Sean Edwards, stone cold, shut down,
which also tracks back to Warren Gatlin, by the way.
Exactly. It's all Warren's fault. But honestly, yeah, I mean, they had 8 dominant tackles to our 3. They had 4 turnover tackles. They made kind of 184 tackles to our 94. And only missed 2 more than we did. And we conceded 4 more turnovers than they did. Their penalty count was through the roof. And the set pieces were even. So it's like, yes, their defense was very good. And that was one of the things that won them this game. But going back to the attack stats, it's like, yeah, they're very similar. Carry meters were like 886 to 744, 21 tackle breaks to their 19, 4 line breaks to their 6, 9 offloads. We had more offloads than France in this game. The difference was that we were putting the moves together, but we weren't getting the gain line. We weren't able to reliably either get behind and get hands away with a trail runner, or literally just penetrate their line with a good kind of angled run, or we weren't compressing them. They were staying calm. They weren't rushing up. They were staying calm. They were staying spread out. They were able to put two men tackles in where they needed to. They were able to flood the ruck where they needed to. So they had us on toast with their defense. And then they just like, yeah, have the ball, run yourselves ragged. And then getting to the point I was trying to make, the difference in the attacks was their stats were the same, but they chose their moments, counter, and did so amazingly. They have players that can counter in a way we can't. Frankly, being honest, it's not how Ireland play. It's how they play because they can. They've got the player base to do it with. But by God, seeing it in full flight, like even when it's happening against you, you have to applaud it. And we kind of have to accept where Ireland are at right now is the end of a development cycle. We're saying goodbye to some stalwart players who really have been historically important Irish players, and I have nothing but graw in my heart for them and wish them the best. But we've got work to do.
Yeah. It's a question of, I mean, you see the difference over the 80 minutes is just the collective performance of the French, which is what you need for a good defensive strategy. You have to all work together, and they were determined. They were making the hits, and that stuff. That's the kind of play that we've been doing, especially defensively, and working together as a team. But they just had that. I'm afraid to say it, but it has to be said: the cohesion among whatever 15 was on the park for them throughout the match. They had it and we didn't. We did some good things at times, but not we weren't following them up with other good things until towards the very end, and we were pushing it. I mean, that breakaway try towards the end, that was probably the most frustrating element of the entire game. But when you take it in context, we were pushing it at that stage. It was kind of almost bound to happen when you're especially when you're playing France with guys like Penaud on the park. I think the real frustrations were happening earlier when we weren't able to score, when we had the chances, and they always knew that they could. They always had that. They always looked like they were able to get us around us out wide, they were just, we gave them those opportunities to do that. What did you make of it, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bad day at the office. Anyway, you look at it, it's our worst defeat in Dublin for I don't know how long. I did see a stat that we haven't conceded that many points in Ireland in Dublin since 2005, which is pretty astonishing. That was against the All Blacks. Whatever, and I said this a little bit earlier, but whatever about losing to this France team, this France team is phenomenal. They are so good. They have so many good players. They are exhilarating to watch, and when it's not your team that it's happening to, they are just it's watching rugby as you kind of want rugby to be played. But even taking that into account, an Ireland team that had genuine potential, is back-to-back champions and had a genuine chance of winning a third in a row, having 42 points stuck on you in your home ground is not a good outcome. Ironically, some of the things, and we mentioned a little bit earlier, but some things that have been a problem for Ireland throughout this tournament actually went broadly okay. Our set piece worked pretty well. Our line-out worked pretty well. We weren't really able to make much of kind of a platform off of either the scrum or the line-out, but they as kind of set pieces, they were functioning fine. And our discipline, oddly, was actually pretty good. We didn't give away many penalties in this game. That was kind of the mad thing about this game. It's just that
only six, I think.
It was six.
Yeah.
But two of those were yellow cards.
Yeah.
And two of those were, three of those were kicked over by Ramos. So the penalties when they came were absolute killers. And by contrast, we were not really able to take advantage of what France were giving us in terms of their lack of discipline. More broadly, attack, which has been a problem, did stutter again. We just, especially in that opening 10 minutes, we weren't able to make those periods of possession count, and that's been a problem all through this tournament. There's obviously been a lot of chatter about Sam Prendergast after this game. He didn't have a great day at the office. I think that's clear to everyone. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination he was the winning or losing of this game. Our pack was blown off the park by France in that second half, when that 7-1 bench came on, and it's not just having the 7-1 bench. Plenty of teams have tried the 7-1 bench and it hasn't worked effectively. France were able to make it work very, very well, and they boxed very clever, and maybe we didn't, but we were just blown away. It's a tough one to take. You're watching your silverware hopes go up in smoke in the space of 15 minutes. You're always going to wonder about what might have been had we kept this one a little bit closer. Had we gotten that bonus point against Wales, we could still be in a shout going into the final weekend. As it is, we're actually up against it to finish higher than third. England currently have the advantage of us. If they get a bonus point against Wales, there's nothing we can do to catch them. So we're hoping that Wales do us a favour, and we need to put in a performance now against Italy. There needs to be a kind of a reaction to this from Ireland, and there's real money on the line for this. The difference between finishing first and finishing third is millions of euro. The difference between had we won a Grand Slam is another million or so euro. That's a lot of money to disappear in the space of 15 minutes. It really is. It was a really, really rough period for Irish rugby. Yesterday afternoon in a very short space of time. It's going to be one that we're just going to have to learn from and build on. One I'd like to forget fairly quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah, just I don't know if this will give anyone any comfort or not, but just to put a little bit of context on losing to this French side. The record for number of tries scored in the Six Nations by a team within the season is England from 2001 scored 29 tries across the full Six Nations. And France are currently on 26. with a match in hand.
Mm.
So that'll give you an idea of where they stand in the pecking order of great scoring, great attacking teams of the last 25 years, or well, actually more if you want to include the whole Five Nations. So yeah, it hurts, but if you're gonna lose, lose to the best.
I mean, there's a reason nobody has won 3 Six Nations in a row in that, because when you win 2 in a row, or even if you win one, the eyes of the other 5 are fixed firmly on you. And
Centric circles
yeah,
drawn on your back like
yeah,
a big feckin' target.
absolutely. And listen, France and France are renowned over the years for playing their own way, no matter what, and expecting that to work. And more often than not, it does work. But this French team was different. They came to play Ireland. They came to play Ireland off the park. They prepared that 7-1 bench the week before just to make sure, or the round before. They were ready to play us. They played us off the park, and all we can do now is regroup and give them more of the same maybe next year, and see what happens. See what happens then. But listen, it's disappointing all around. But listen, that's a brilliant pod, though. You both did really well going over the game. Fair play to you, and watching it again for me as well. Thanks again for that. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Keno and Hugo for joining me. Hope to have you back on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jeff.
As for our next batch of Harpin, we'll have our 80+ column posting on Wednesday before turning our attention back to Ireland's final Six Nations assignment in Rome. So please be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.